Alright, now I know you're super excited to get started with coding in Python and doing data analysis, but before we do all that, I want to introduce you to the tool that we'll be using. What you see in front of you on your screen is a Jupyter notebook. Now there's many different environments that you can use to write Python code, but we're going to be using Jupyter notebooks in this class. And we're going to be using it because it gives us a really nice way of writing code and seeing the output, but also including the narrative text along with it. All right, so let's get started. Right now, what I have open is a brand new Jupyter Notebook document. As you can see up here, it just says untitled, and then you have here what's called a cell. Now, cells are what you're going to be using to do all of your work in Jupyter Notebooks. And there's going to be, these markdown cells where you can include your narrative text inside, but also these code cells in which you can run your code and see the output right there. So right now, this cell is a code cell, as you can see from the drop-down menu up here. And I'm going to actually just click here and write a very simple little code, just 2 plus 2. And then I'm going to go up here and click the play button. And that is going to run the code and then create a new cell below. And so it creates this new cell below when it's the last cell. And so since it was the only one, that was the last one. And as you can see on the left, you see this in, that's the input, and output. So the output was 4 because 2 plus 2 equals 4. You see this little number here, it says 1, and that just kind of gives you the order in which your code was run, just so you can kind of have a history of, I ran this code and then this code and so on. So actually if I do, for example, on this next cell, 2 plus 4, and then click on this little play button, you get 6, and then you see this 2. This was the second piece of code that was run. So this is how you're going to use the code cells. Don't worry too much about the actual coding now. You'll learn that later on. But these are just there's all these cells that you can use to write your code. Now I have just been creating new cells just by running the last one. You can also click on this little plus button, and it says insert cell below. So actually, let's see if I go over here and click that little plus, I create a new cell. All right, now let's try doing a markdown cell. So I'm going to go up here. I have this cell highlighted. I'm going to go up here and click markdown. And now I can just create text, and I can format it using markdown. And so I'm going to, for example, create a title. All right, so whoops, this is my title. And then I can go up to the top, click that little run cell, and this is formatted in markdown format. And so let's say I want to kind of edit that markdown cell. I'm going to go back up here. I can double click on it, and then you see this it comes back up. I'm going to press enter, and then I'm going to maybe write some text. This is some text, right? And then I'll click that play button again. And so you have your title, you have some text, and you can play around with all sorts of markdown formatting. There's resources online if you need help with that, but most of what you're going to be doing is just going to have some titles and some text. And so this is basically the basis of what you're going to be using to work in Jupyter Notebooks. There's all sorts of other things you can do in these Jupyter Notebooks. You can kind of explore these little tabs. There's cells, so you can run all above, run all below. That basically just runs all the cells above or runs all the cells below. If you go over to here to edit, I want to kind of show you how split cell works. So let's go over here. Let me double click here. And then, let's put my cursor right here at the end of this. Let's say I want to separate this into 2 different cells. I'm going to go over to edit, and I'm going to do split cell, and you see this creates my 2 different cells. And so I would have to run these again using this play, and again, and then you can see this is formatted nicely. You have these different cells. And so, sometimes you might want to break up some code, or you just want to break up some text. This is a way to do that by splitting cells. So there's all sorts of things you can, you can merge cell above, so I'm going to merge that back, and that brings those cells together. And so you can kind of play around with this. You can change the title up here, sample notebook, right? And click OK. Just play around with it. This is what we're going to be using to work through the examples and getting you used to working in Python and writing Python code while also including the text to describe what's going on. Now, one last thing that I want to mention is some keyboard shortcuts. There's actually just one keyboard shortcut that I want to mention, and that is Shift Enter. Now, if you don't remember any other keyboard shortcut, this is the one to remember. Basically, if you press Shift Enter, that'll just run that cell and then select the one below. So I'm going to go over here and do Shift Enter. And you see this ran this cell, and you see it replaced the number with 3. That means it was the third piece of code that was run, the third cell with code in it that was run in this document. And so it ran it. It has the same output 6, because 2 plus 4 is still 6. And then it selected the cell below. So you really Shift Enter is going to be really useful for you to kind of just go through these code cells and run them, or even just through the markdown cells and run them all. So that's one thing to remember. Just kind of help you go through these notebooks quicker than just kind of having to go up here to the play and click it every time. Instead, you could just press Shift Enter, and that'll do the exact same thing as clicking that play button.